This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Things I Found Online is brought to you by Manscaped. Yes, today's show is about female empowerment, and yes, our sponsor product Scrapes Men. Or Scapes Men?
Oh.
I'm not sure. It scapegoats men. No, it scapes them. Does your
scra-
man need scaping?
It
Scrapes
them.
Why? Because Manscaped offers the right tools for every job. The lawnmower, the hair and body wash, the ball deodorant. All of this comes with free boxers. So why the hell not, ladies? Sign me up. All right. Now we're ready to begin our show. Is everyone done scaping?
I think so.
All right, roll that theme
Hit
music.
it, Mitch. Today on Things I Found Online, women are using the internet to inform, encourage, and empower themselves and others. And we know this because we have found it online. Welcome, if you will, our guests, internationally recognized authority on the obstacles faced by women in the workplace. It's Sara Laschever and gender equality champion and podcaster Julie Harris-Walker. Our panel includes myself, Jamie Alcroft,
Hey.
silence crickets, and Danny Mann.
Oh, you're
Our
good.
host includes Louise Palenka. Weezy?
Thank you, Jamie. We have so much to discuss,
Yeah.
but first, holiday survival stories. Danny,
Ooh,
who has one?
Oh, the pressure.
Did you survive?
Yes, I survived. It was a wonderful holiday break. It's great to see everybody back again. And I was thinking as the year started, like there's that buzz over the holidays where you're kind of at peace with the world and you've sung carols and you've been with family and it's nice and warm and sweet. And then just like around the second or the third, you start waiting for the other shoe to fall, the little tiny things that you've been letting go for 2 weeks.
You mean like the president starting a war?
Just anything that like didn't bother. It's like I'm not a carrot, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's a sock missing. Oh, that. And how long it takes for you to start really getting peeved about little things again, and maybe don't this time.
Oh.
And just so you're saying try to recapture that moment during the holidays where you just wanted to forgive everything and everyone.
Yeah,
because why not? We're all here together
and see all the good and everything. I had some great. I didn't plan anything for these holidays, and so many things fell into my lap that were just wonderful, including a great reunion with a huge hunk of my family that I didn't know about. That what are you doing tomorrow? Come on down to Newport.
Wow.
20 of my cousins were there.
A 23andMe kind of thing?
It was awesome. It was
Wow.
It turns out I'm Bolivian.
Wow. That's amazing.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I know. We did that whole thing. Our family did it. We always thought we were from Cleveland. Turns out we're from Pittsburgh.
Oh, that must have been shocking. Are you okay?
It was, I think so. We're recovering.
It's just a bus ticket.
It was a cultural shift in the way we think about our heritage.
Which teams to root for, how to get rid of a jersey.
Yeah. But those
Well,
things
Danny and
happen.
I spent New Year's Day at Jamie's house.
Yes.
Yes,
And
I couldn't
Imagine his surprise when he walked out of the bedroom and we were there.
Yeah, I know.
Now, who could that be? It was like an old Jack Benny show.
And they spent the whole day there.
It was a lovely holiday party.
It was really nice.
All right, we're gonna
It was
welcome-
really nice. And that's
Well,
my
you have more
holiday
to- oh,
story.
yeah, go ahead. More to
That's
add.
my
This is
holiday
where-
story.
Yeah.
And that is that at that party, we asked people to bring food that reflected upon their origins. And my wife, being Japanese heritage, she made sushi, handmade sushi. There, you saw it, man.
Yeah.
She was rolling it up.
I brought a goat.
And she was rolling those big rice spleefs. And then me being of Scottish heritage, I made oatmeal. Which was
Nicely
a
done.
big hit.
And he
at
wore
the
a
party.
kilt while he was mixing
it.
it.
Was a big hit. Porridge and gruel.
Oh,
gruel.
please.
Yes. I did a kind of porridge and gruel kind of. No, I made a great
P&G.
salmon. But anyway, so I asked everybody to bring something, and I figured, how you do that? Well, the salads are covered. Okay, I got the desserts covered. And then this one guy said, "What can I bring?" And I said, "Would you bring the beverages? You bring some champagne cup and some seltzer water and maybe a six pack of beer or something." And he said, "Sure, I can't wait to be there." And he shows up at the end of the evening. With the beverages, and we're all paving there.
You were parched.
We
Everyone
were
was
a little
parched.
parched.
Yeah.
We were all pouring water out of the sink.
Yeah, sushi and milk.
Who- We need names. He's not the whistleblower. Who is he?
Yeah.
No, I'm not telling you. I won't tell you on the air. I can't do that.
This could be
I'm
his
sworn to
moment.
secrecy.
I would like for us to welcome our guests. We're going to start with in studio. We have Julie Harris-Walker. She has been fascinated with all things related to entertainment and gender equality in business since her days as an acting major and women's studies minor at NYU. Julie has spent the last 20 years in Los Angeles working in the entertainment industry as a producer, auditor, production finance executive, and vice president of marketing and sales. She currently works as SVP, which I assume that means senior VP?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I thought it was Sutton
I
Barth
still don't know what
Bernard.
VP stands for, but I added the senior, and you guys were like, wow, she
Wow.
really... Of West Coast operations for Greenslate, an entertainment payroll and software services company. And Julie is a voice and a force in podcasting. Did you know Julie has 3 amazing children? She has written a book about pregnancy discrimination in corporations called
Wow.
You'll Never Have a Baby in This Job Again. She used to think it was cool that she was often the only woman in the room. Now she sees it as a symptom of a larger problem, and she is podcasting about it. Julie hosts 3 podcasts.
Count them. 3.
She has
We barely
1,
host
2,
one.
she has 3 children and 3 podcasts.
I don't think we're going to get through this one today.
Yeah.
No.
She hosts a podcast called The Other 50% or Her Story of Hollywood. Click on link, gentlemen. Catch a Break, The Insider's Guide to Breaking Into and Navigating Hollywood. And The Kiss My Age Show, where women of a certain age talk about anything and everything. Welcome, Julie. How do you manage your jobs, 3 kids, and 3 podcasts? How are you here?
That is the question.
Wow.
It's not easy, I'm not going to lie.
You must have a huge business card, by the way.
Yeah.
I put them all on one business card.
Tremendous.
You know what? One kid went to college, so that freed me up a lot.
You know what I was thinking? If you just named your kids after your podcast, you had 3 less things to remember.
That's a good idea. I'll run that by them.
Okay.
Yeah,
They'll
we
go
were
for
going to
it.
name our kids after where we conceived them, but then one would be kitchen table and the other would be shower stall.
I don't need to picture any of this.
Too much
okay.
information.
Okay.
Oh my God.
So all right.
had
So
to
one
throw
kid went
that
to
in.
college. How old are your kids?
Oh gosh, that's always a very hard question. Today,
They keep changing.
they do. There's a birthday like next week. They're 13, 14, and 18.
Oh,
What
wow.
great ages.
And what are they? Boys, girls, a little of
2
everything?
girls and a
One
boy.
of
The
each.
baby's a boy.
That's such an old favorite joke of
The
mine.
baby's the boy. I have 2 girls and the baby's the boy.
It's the sweetest.
But the baby's 26 now.
You
still
call
wearing
the baby,
diapers.
don't you?
Diapers. He's still wearing diapers. Yeah.
So welcome, Sara Laschever, who, full disclosure, is my cousin. Hello, Sara.
Hi, Sara.
Sara Laschever has spent her career investigating the challenges that shape women's lives in these rapidly changing times. She is the co-author with Linda Babcock of both Women Don't Ask, the groundbreaking study that focused public attention on the forces that prevent women from negotiating on their own behalf, and Ask for It, a nuts and bolts negotiation training primer for women struggling to overcome barriers in their path. A sought-after speaker, Sara lectures and teaches workshops to corporate audiences, colleges and universities, law firms, government agencies, and women's leadership conferences in the U.S. and around the world. She is frequently cited in the media as an expert on women's leadership, the persistence of the wage gap, and the multiple factors influencing women's long-term career success. A founding faculty member of the Carnegie Mellon Leadership and Negotiation Academy for Women, and formerly a senior fellow at the Center for Work-Life Policy, Sara also worked as research associate and principal interviewer for Project Access, a trailblazing Harvard University study of the obstacles blocking women's progress in the sciences. She currently works with Allison Rim Associates, a consulting firm that helps organizations and individuals devise strategies to be both successful and happy, with Tech Up for Women, a collaborative learning center and conference supporting women's careers in science and technology. She provides private coaching services to women navigating critical career transitions and facilitated group coaching for women eager to share their own experiences and learn from those of their peers.
When do you sleep?
I don't know. This is my cousin.
Just
it's
writing that
gen-
took so long.
genetically
Moly.
connected to me, and I don't even. I'm like. The combined informative energy of Sara and Julie can be heard in this episode of Julie's podcast,
yes.
The Other 50%, and is a mandatory listen for every woman, father, husband, human, or other on planet Earth.
I think you covered
did-
everybody.
That's all the
I did
people.
my homework.
I listened to this
I listened.
conversation, and
Yes.
Julie was so well prepared, and I think a huge fangirl of Sara's.
Oh, I
And-
think she's the smartest in the land, and she's changed my life.
Oh,
Yes,
that's
and so I love it when the interviewer is prepared and the interviewee is gifted and brilliant. The conversation is something that all women should listen to, because I think a lot just gets sort of shoved aside by women, where we kind of just push forward thinking, oh well, that's just the way things are. And so for me, listening to the conversation compelled me to take a closer look back down my own road and to acknowledge that a lot of the obstacles I faced were probably gender generated. What events specifically inspired each of you to incorporate this aspect of the human experience into your work? And we will start with Sara.
Well, do you want the short answer or the long answer? The
Not going anywhere.
middle
We got all
We
day.
have coffee.
We got all day.
Louise, I'm sure you had this experience too, that my mother's life was very different from her mother's, and my life very different from my mother's. And I kind of came of age, really charged into the workforce at a point where we thought, okay, it's all fixed, barriers are down, we're all going to school, we're all going to have these fantastic careers. And then it turned out not to be true. So I was just always interested in women's lives and how they, they weren't as, wrote by the numbers straightforward as men's. They required more improvisation, more flexibility, and, more persistence in the face of lots of obstacles. So just spent my career looking at how women's lives play out in the arts, in academia, in the sciences, in business. And that's a lifelong study.
But do you think you get this from your father, that you feel like you had the right to ask and question?
Well, my dad, although he was a pretty sexist guy in certain ways, he sent all his kids to college and private school. And he gave us this piece of advice, which is just a fantastic little talisman to take with you, which he said, don't take no for an answer the first 3 times. And
First 3
that's pretty good. I have had people raise their hand when I've spoken and to say, what about no? Don't you understand? And what I understand about no is that no isn't always no. It's often not no. It's kind of
But how can we teach
or
boys
not right now, or I don't think so, but maybe if you keep talking, I'll figure out a way to turn.
But how can we teach boys that no means no, and then teach girls to keep asking?
Wow.
That's the trick.
There's the trick.
Yeah,
But
that's-
do you find, Sara? Do you find that these achievements go in kind of plateaus? That you reach for something and you get it, and then you travel along and things seem to be the same for a while, and then you can gravitate to another level. For instance, women becoming more aware now of equal pay, which was I don't think was an issue that was in the general public's consciousness.
Yeah, we didn't know.
10 years ago. It may have been, but it wasn't in my consciousness, and I think I'm pretty general about everything.
Well, I don't mean to insult you, but I think many, many women were aware of this for a long time.
Okay. Well, no, that's not insulting at all.
Out there.
No.
It's been very clear. It's not just that the wage gap between white women and white men is substantial. The wage gap is bigger between white men and women of color. It's biggest between white men and Latina women. So, people are tracking the data. I think for a lot of successful women, they thought, well, yeah, but it doesn't apply to me. I've got this great education.
Right.
I've been very successful. I haven't run into any barriers. There's a phenomenon that this sociologist named Faye Crosby calls the denial of personal disadvantage. And what that describes is
Beautiful.
how, a lot of people in a minority group, doesn't have to be women, it could be another minority group, will think, yeah, there is a lot of discrimination against my group, but not me. I've been lucky. And the only way you can tell that that's actually not true is to collect some data.
Yeah.
And it's only recently that there's been a lot more push towards data collection. So you can see the systemic disadvantages when in your personal situation, you think, well, my boss likes me. He admires my work. He's supportive. I don't think he would actually, hold me back or discriminate against me. But the problem is a lot of that behavior is subconsciously motivated. People don't realize it.
Do you think that people some women feel lucky, or do you think, in my case, I felt like, oh, yeah, but I know how to navigate, and that's why I'm doing well?
I think it's both. I think sometimes it leans towards one side or the other. Sometimes it's both. But I think a lot of it is like, yeah, I'm really good. I'm really smart. I'm really capable, and I don't suffer fools or whatever, take shit from anybody. And
and the only crime is resignation. If you're just resigned to the fact that this is going to be your life, you fight for it.
Well, you feel like you're doing, as a woman, you feel like you're doing well enough.
Yes.
And you kind of accept that there are differences between the way men are treated and women are treated. And since you're doing fine, you don't want to rattle the tree. I don't think that's a term, but pretend it was.
It is now.
Because you like your job, and so you're fine. And if I ask for too much, people might expect too much of me, and then fire me, or whatever might happen. We're fearful of change, and so we accept what is, and we make it make sense.
And that's where the resignation comes in, and
I guess I would disagree a little bit.
Okay.
I don't think women are necessarily fearful of change. I actually think women are more, and I think there's actually some research on women are a little more limber, a little bit more flexible in response to change. But I do think the tree rattling that you mentioned is
See, I told you would catch on.
that women know from experience, from watching other women, that squeaky wheels when they're female wheels. Got a lot of mixed metaphors here. Don't necessarily.
We got trees, chains,
women
wheels.
are worried that if they push a little, or they complain, or they, are a little more persistent, that there will be a backlash, that people will, punish them in one way or another, and that happens, and they see that happen to other women who are, fairly direct about what they want.
And do you see?
So it's not that women are afraid of change; they're afraid of getting punished for asking for the change they know they deserve.
But you see it changing now, don't you? I mean, isn't there a light at the end of the tunnel? You see it changing. I mean, the more we talk about it, the fact that we're talking about it today, a lot of
There's
talk.
Lots of talk.
Okay,
Lots of talk.
I see.
Well, what I want to say while we're here with two men on the panel for Sara and Julie is I know that when you are white,
speak for yourself.
You have no real concept of what people of color encounter every day of their lives. What should men know to help them better understand what women face daily?
Please.
Oh, the list is so long.
Please, we're here. We got all day.
I was just thinking when Sara was talking a minute ago, like in a corporate environment, what it might look like that you may not notice in the moment. Like I noticed in my career, I did very well and I always got promoted, but there was always a class I had to take before I got promoted, or a coaching I had to have before I got promoted, whereas the men around me just got promoted because they walked in the door, And I was always like, oh, yes, it was presented as we're investing in you, or we're really putting our time and money behind you to help you grow. And I didn't notice that the men didn't have to jump through those same hoops to get to the same place.
That's interesting.
And what did those classes consist of?
Oh, leadership classes, management classes, corporate coaching, all of that stuff, which I thought was great and I loved and I really was very into it.
And golf.
Team building.
No, but I think they're thinking that people won't respond to you in a leadership capacity unless we've trained you. They won't naturally see you in a leadership role unless you learn these specific sets of skills.
Really?
Whereas a man just walks in, it's like, I got this.
He has authority and is respected because he walked in the door.
Because that's the only thing that comes to mind as to why.
He's just faking it. That's it.
Of course.
Of course.
It also delays your promotion and your advancement because first you have to go through this process.
But you learn by doing. I mean, yes, he's faking it, but fake it to make it.
Do you think that's still the case today, Julie?
Oh, yes.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Well, how can we change it? How can, other than talking about it?
Although talking about it, you always hear people talking about that part of the issue is having the conversation. Start the conversation, that the conversation will end up, enabling change.
Well, I mean, one of the blessings is once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Right.
So half the battle is getting everyone to see it.
Well, we got to change it at the elementary level, literally and figuratively. It has to come from the way we raise our children, the values with which we raise our children to believe in, or at least twist.
I think the problem it's beyond systemic because there's a part of human nature that's just kind of like baked into us as male and female humans, and a lot of men are very evolved and they get it, and they may feel an instinct to respond in a certain way and then say, no, you need to rethink that. But I'm going to tell you a story that will shock and disturb you, and I'm not going to mention any names or how I heard this story because
not even one?
I don't want it traced to anybody.
So
there's a person that I know of who is in a pilot training program with an airline, and she goes somewhere out of California and takes this class. It's all men and her. And they're divided into study groups and partner groups for different projects and different learning experiences. There's the other men in one group and her. No one will work with her. No one will talk to her.
What?
No one will have dinner with her.
Really?
And
How recently was this?
This is now. This is happening right now.
Oh, my God.
And I'm not going to tell you how I heard the story because there's only a certain number of airlines and it could be traced to, this person. But this is what's happening. And so within that culture, no one's interceding and saying, guys. So
no guys.
And
are
I had the
stepping
same
up?
experience when I was made a regular at the Comedy Store, where no men that would talk to me in other locations would not talk to me there. So it's kind of this thing where even if one of them wants to talk to her, they can't really be seen talking to her. So it's just, we've decided that being a pilot is super macho, and it gets me chicks, and it makes people think that I'm godlike because I can fly through the air. And as soon as this skill is taught to a female, then that power evaporates. That's one of my, as I was thinking through how is this happening, that's one of my thoughts. But Sara, am I even close to what may be fueling some of the resistance still for women to enter into worlds that were male occupied traditionally?
Well, super complicated question. Yes and no. I think that there's a lot of social conditioning that's going on. One of your other hosts, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, just said, well, we're all talking about it now. Isn't that going to change things?
That was Danny.
We've been talking for a long time, and it turns out that doesn't change things. Mentoring programs, many of the things that organizations have tried over time actually don't result in women getting up into more senior positions and, not running into those barriers. So there are researchers going back and looking at what really will make a difference. And, it's a complicated subject, but it really has to be an organizational commitment. It has to be a cultural commitment from the top down. There have to be very clear evaluation systems that are transparent, that are applied to everybody at the same time, and everybody knows what they are, because subjectivity creeps into everything. Or, macho self-consciousness creeps into everything. Whatever, what is my role? Is this comfortable? Is it okay if she's here? All that stuff gets in the way unless there are systems that make it very straightforward who gets to do what and what are the qualifications and how do you get promoted. So I just thought of this. There's a study that somebody did a few years ago now where they listed a bunch of words and they asked people to identify words that they identified with men, words identified with women, and words that made them think of leaders or managers. And there are very few words that overlap with women and leaders, lots of words that overlapped with men and leaders. So we do have a lot of subconscious impulses that don't associate women with leadership. So we think, oh, she maybe needs to go get some training before I can let her have this job. And we can't see that actually she's already perfectly qualified for it. She doesn't need this basically remedial program to get her ready to do it.
Well, even if she does, everybody should have to take that program. The men and the women. I mean,
right.
if they're doling it out,
the culture, the system is set up.
Who knows what you
training,
might learn?
You move ahead. Yeah, everybody should do it.
Who knows what you might learn? So everybody should do it, and that's, it's like I think there should be paternity leave.
Yes.
Because we don't sleep either.
Right. Men also have children.
Yeah, we don't sleep.
It hurts more.
It hurts a lot more.
The birth is harder.
Yeah. Woo. Anyway, I yearn for a balance. I yearn for that, and sure, talking about it may not do it and may not have done it, but it has helped, because I think of when I first met Gloria Steinem back in the early 70s. Yeah. It tweaked me as a man. I mean, she moved me. I was, of course, very attracted to her, but she moved me as a person with the things that she was saying and the respect that she was demanding at that time. And so like I say, I think it's all in the education. And if we're accepting LGBTQ kids when they're in first grade, I mean, why can't we balance out the male and female thing?
Well, one
is
of
that
the
just
yeah,
and I don't believe in human nature, by the way. So you're talking to a guy who doesn't believe in human nature.
I do, and I think that one of the factors that's mixed into the brew is that men will look at a woman and instantly assess her as attractive to him or not, and he'll put her. She'll either be someone that he listens to because he likes looking at her, or someone that he listens to because she's his boss or his coworker, and he's decided that gender shouldn't matter. But he still goes through that process because he's human. So a lot of times, they've done these experiments where there's a attractive woman standing by her car and needing of assistance, and the cars are whizzing, or the cars are stopping.
What kind of car?
And then there's a woman that's not as attractive and no one's stopping. So a lot of male behavior is based around, do I find this female in my presence to be attractive? And so this factors into absolutely everything that Sara and Julie study.
Question, does the opposite enter into this at all? Do women perception of men ever go through that same categorization?
We do, but it doesn't affect how or whether or not we respect the person's leadership or authority or co-worker status. I mean, Sara, weigh in here. Help me. I may not know what I'm talking about.
Someone said
Her
something.
tree stopped rattling.
I interviewed a gender strategist, Jeffrey Tobias Halter, and he said something to me that just stopped me in my tracks, which was men look at women at work and put them in a completely different category than the women at home. They may advocate for their daughters, their wives, but see the women in their office as a completely different creature, which I was just like, whoa, because that affects everything.
Yeah, and
That's
so
true.
I'm wondering, since we have two males that we're studying in the wild
who have never worked in an office.
We just went from panel to an experiment over here.
But
Absolutely.
Danny,
what I want to
you
know
worked
is
in an office. I've never worked in an
I've
office.
worked in an office.
All right, but still, in the 70s or 80s, when you had to report to a woman, whether she was a club owner, they're both comedians, or in some way that she held authority over you in the chain of command that existed, was your first instinct ever, I don't want to, in other words, was your first instinct to sort of rebel against that kind of paradigm? Did it feel wrong?
No.
Or emasculating?
No, I was raised, I had three sisters.
I had
two sisters. Yeah, well, three sisters.
But in that same situation, my assessment of the person, because we were all coworkers, but the person who was ahead of me had been there longer, and that mattered. That was something, and also that experience. Can I learn from here? And as we moved forward, I was always, is she worthy of that? And I'm less worthy. Is my talent? You start measuring other things, but it was never about her being a woman.
Never occurred to me.
That I remember clearly.
Awesome.
Yeah, me too. But if they were very attractive, I think that changed the dynamic.
Yeah, that's
did.
something that I think is.
Yeah,
but I think that's human. I think that's men and women both. I've heard it from both. So.
And one of the sites I visited when I was surfing through the stuff you gave us, the links on what I found online was the 22 challenge.
Oh, let's save that for the end of the show.
Oh, yeah, that's
You're
dessert.
going to get us off topic.
Gosh.
Don't ruin dessert.
Follow
Spoiler
the rundown,
alert,
Jamie.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
We're going to stop for a break, and we're going to come back with all kinds of interesting stuff like that to talk about.
Hi, everyone. This is Clint.
This is Ross.
This is Joel,
This is Cutter
This is Tony.
from 3 Beers In.
a proud member of Big Heads Media Network.
Each episode we review local Austin craft beer and talk about
Clove and Bananas.
References I don't get.
And Academy Award winner Matthew McConaughey.
So tune in,
crack open a beer.
And hang out with us.
Find us on bigheadsmedia.com.
iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify,
Or on 3beersinpodcast.com.
this is the podcast.
It's nothing. I'm 6 beers in right now.
By
Julie,
the way, just a question to everybody. When you go buy a Lincoln, do you take a peek in to see if Matthew is driving?
I do not.
I do. Okay, I still do.
Okay.
Julie, would you say that the MeToo movement could have happened without the internet?
No. I mean,
There's an ugh.
Take it to the
it
streets.
certainly helps. And it actually started 10 years ago with Tarana Burke, and I didn't hear about it until it happened this last round, a couple of years ago. And I think
how did she start it?
Back up and explain that for those
How
of
did
us
she
at
start
home
it?
playing at home.
Gosh, I wish I knew more of the history. Tarana Burke was the first person to come out with hashtag MeToo. And it didn't get as much traction as it did now, and it could have been because it started with women of color and didn't have as much visibility because the white people are always very late to the party. Yeah. So then when it happened a few years ago with, I think, Alyssa Milano.
Alyssa Milano kind of.
And it was on Twitter, which wasn't as big of a thing in 2010, you know? So I think
we
it was
were
just
more civilized then.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think it was a confluence of so much exposure with the social media, and it was so big and so powerful so instantly that there was no dismissing it. When you saw everyone on your Facebook feed say "Me Too" or everyone on your Twitter feed, I think it was astounding how big and pervasive, and it was shocking.
It gives permission, and so a lot of people are holding on to a lot for a long time, and then a hashtag makes it all happen in the same location. So you click and you can read through. And so there's power in the technology, not just the internet, but how we're using the technology to connect through lines that are universal. Sara, how can women use the internet to network?
Well, women use the internet to network in all sorts of ways. I think, there are many women's networking groups that are connected to particular professions. There are some that are more for younger women, some for more, advanced professionals. My sense is that the way in which women use these networking sites most effectively is if they use them to make connections and then they meet offline. That it's fine to collect a lot of names for your email blast list, but they don't actually turn into leads or turn into introductions or turn into whatever recommendations until you've actually had a conversation with somebody. So a lot of the best groups, online groups, they have, different locations or different centers in, busy cities. And so you can be part of that particular local group and then go to their cocktail party or go to their networking event.
How do you feel about LinkedIn, and are any of us using it correctly? Because I don't believe I am.
I think you have to be on LinkedIn because people will search for you there. So you need to have the information up there. I'm not sure how useful it is in actually developing business, but I don't know if I use it as well as I could. I wonder what Julie thinks about that.
I agree with you that you need to be on LinkedIn, and that's where people find
it's
you.
It's kind of like a resume, so
you
have to have one there.
Yeah, but I find more connection on Facebook, as much as I want to be done with Facebook, but groups and connections, and you can see, I'll see someone on LinkedIn, but then I'll go to Facebook to see how many real connections we have in real life.
And if they have a pet and if it's cute.
Yeah, exactly.
It's poo-pooed, but it's a tremendous form of communication.
Yeah, we just
Facebook.
wish they were better.
We have to be better on Facebook, and we have to communicate.
We're the audience and the show.
We really are, and we're our own editors, which is crazy. I mean, there's nobody's editing anymore. It's just boom, all out there, and that's why I think any of these social medias can help what you're trying to do, what you're trying to say, what you're trying to educate people about, and
there's lots of good tools. It's how we use them.
Yeah, I still go back to first grade.
What happened then?
And learning to respect. I mean, I could go back as far as the late 60s, which was after first grade.
18 or 19.
But I can, really. And women didn't want to be called chicks. And because it was that 50s transition to the 60s, because there were chicks and babes and broads and all these terrible words that we can't use or don't use anymore out of respect, and I can remember when that was all happening in
it's
the
funny that
late
all
60s.
those
and we started supporting it, though.
But all those words are considered disrespectful for women.
Yeah.
But any of the words that come up from men, like dude, or none of those are ever considered disrespectful.
Or dick.
I just have to tell you a classic from our family, because there were 4 boys, my dad.
Four dudes?
Four brothers. I've got 3 brothers and a father. But my mom, if we ever said anything about it, my dad would say, blah, blah, so. And I said, well, she said I could. And he would always say, she? You mean
Yeah.
your mother?
Yes.
Ooh.
My dad said the same thing.
You
to
weren't
me.
allowed to refer to your mother as she?
Yeah.
Never, ever.
I
You
never
always had to
knew.
use her title.
My
Did
mother
not
had
know
no
that.
pronoun.
I have to say my
Did
mother.
not. Mother may
Always.
I. So here's another good question. What are the best job search sites? Let's say you've got a job or you're out of college and you've heard about Monster and these other places. What are the best places to go and say I'm available or see what's available?
Honestly, I'm skeptical about the whole job site thing at the moment because I think the way the algorithms are set up, I know very few people who get past the filter to get an actual interview. I think at least in Hollywood or in Los Angeles, the way it happens is you know somebody and
That's
or
right.
someone
So
introduces
it's
you to somebody,
Somebody
so that you can get
recommends
in the
you.
door.
Mhm.
Right? Because if
Yeah.
you're getting 200 resumes for a position, you can't even go through them. So I think more often than not, it's who you know and it's networking.
And
What do you
how
think, Sarah?
gender affected do you think that is?
How what?
How gender affected do you think that is? I mean, because are men talking to each other about job offerings more than women are? I don't know. There's a lot of women in show business.
Well,
I
and
think not enough.
The women are
but
organizing.
There's a lot. Good.
Make no mistake. The women
Good.
are organized right now
Good,
for
good,
sure and making such an effort in the networking and the
Yes, I
promoting
know
each other.
Patricia
And
does.
so I think that part of it for sure is shifting.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's healthy.
I guess I would say, if I may jump in,
Please.
that algorithms are not neutral. And so you put your resume in, whatever, Indeed.com or one of those other sites, and you don't know what keywords they're looking for to weed you out. And so they get 3,000 resumes and 4 make it through the algorithm. And I'm sure that in some cases, because it's not public, you can't see it, they put in something that weeds out women or weeds out people with names that sound ethnic in one way or another.
Oh my goodness.
My goodness.
And so, I think just firing your resume off into the ether is
The abyss.
discouraging. My son just graduated from college, applied for like 50 jobs, things he was very qualified for, did a lot of work, wrote the cover letters, and the job he got, somebody just pulled his resume out of some some cyber pile that it had ended up on. He hadn't done any work. He hadn't written a cover letter, whatever, for this particular job.
He is the greatest boy in the world.
He hadn't really graduated.
So there's that.
He hadn't really graduated.
Louise says that on every show, but
Yes.
it's mostly because her relatives are on the show.
No,
So it's,
this
she's
is
this
my
boy.
cousin Moses, and he is
The whole shtetl's working.
perfect.
You should meet him. You should meet him.
He's objectively pretty great.
Yeah, he is.
And,
He is.
whatever.
You know who would
Objectively.
be good for him?
Who?
Sylvia.
Sylvia.
Yes. I'm just trying to match him up with
Oh, no.
somebody.
Did you just
He
turn
doesn't
into
need-
Yenta?
I was just
Full
trying to be a
service.
Yenta.
Oh,
Sorry.
Service here on the podcast.
I'm
So
sorry.
goodbye,
Is she on-
Golda,
is
and
she on
thank
the
you.
East Coast?
Is she on the East Coast?
Yeah.
I have a
No, but
question.
I do want to say one more thing about job
Yes.
sites.
Yes, please.
I think the ones that work better are the ones that are dedicated to particular professions or particular fields. That if you just go to monster.com or Indeed, which are huge clearinghouses for everything,
Mm-hmm.
that you are going to have, 7,000 people applying for each entry-level job. But if every field has its own site, you need to do some whatever resourceful Googling and find the ones that that actually will direct you to specific jobs, not just like entry level, whatever, feeding frenzy jobs, doing what you want to do. And it's hardest when you are just starting out. But as you get a little further along, those sites that are connected to your professional association or whatever to do with your field, I think you get more bang for your buck.
Are women innately more supportive than they are competitive?
Wow.
I think that's way too broad a question.
Yeah.
She said broad.
Esoteric. She said broad.
In many situations, they are. I teach people how to negotiate. In negotiating, 2 women together typically reach better agreements for both sides than a man and a woman negotiating, and actually a much better agreement for both sides than 2 men, because men tend to, go at it. I'm going to win, you're going to lose.
Right.
It's zero sum. Women do tend to share more information, figure out, so what are your problems? How can I help? This is what I need.
Common ground.
And figure out one of those
Your
famous
problem
win-win
solvers. You really
solutions.
are. I mean, you just by nature, There, I said it.
Right.
You're problem solvers because you raise families. You make it all work, and you really should run this place. I wish you would.
I think we should run more things.
I wish you would.
I think that there's a part of all of us that feels like
Liz.
if he wants Liz, I'm Team Joe.
Liz.
Interesting that he wants the female candidate, and I'm Team Joe. So there's just a candidate for everyone this year.
Joe's gender fluid.
I think it's a natural feel. Like this is the analogy that, like, let's say you're in line with your groceries, and then the other line is moving faster, or someone cuts in front of you. So that feels very zero sum, and we've all had that feeling. If you want to know what it feels like, just picture someone cutting in front of you in traffic. It's not a good feeling. But most things are not that finite, and most things have a collaborative solution. And you have to take a deep breath and remind yourself that if this person does well, it doesn't mean that they're taking something from me.
It's not pie.
Yeah,
it's not pie.
It's not pie.
Yeah, that's
There
good.
you go. I need
There's
that.
the T-shirt.
That's good advice right there.
I just wanted to
there
say
are.
that in the professional field, I feel like a lot of jobs, especially when you get to a higher level, those kind of personality traits and characteristics that are like more associated with men are just like more highly valued, and women have to kind of take on more of those personality traits, whether or not I don't think it's as useful to discuss if it's in our nature to be this or that. It's more like from a top down perspective, more male. I don't want to say that it's like men are like this, women are like that, but just those kinds of traits that are more associated with men are more valued, and it would be better if the kinds of values that are associated with women
We're more valued.
Were more brought
absolutely.
into the
Well, Sara, when you're
spotlight.
training when you're training people one-on-one, do you endeavor to have them exhibit characteristics that feel unnatural, or do you try to work with who they are and have them accentuate portions of themselves and use those tools more often, or give them permission to use those tools more often, or do you ask them to behave in ways that just do not feel like them until they at some point do?
Good question.
Well, it's never really works to get people to try to act in ways that don't feel comfortable or speak in voices that don't feel like their own voice. But it is true that we think that qualities that we associate with men are in fact more suited to leadership roles. So that puts women in a bit of a bind, not just because this doesn't feel like me, I can't comfortably act that way, but because even when women do, we don't like it. It's fine for men to behave in that way. That's leadership. They're no nonsense. They're focused on the goal. They don't suffer fools. Women, they're difficult. They're overbearing. They're demanding. They're not a team player. They're high maintenance. They're,
Yeah, there's a lot of negativity.
And so women have to, thread a pretty, walk a pretty fine line. Here we are with those metaphors again, where they display competence, act decisively, but not in a way that comes off as threatening.
Right.
And so it is an extra burden on women, it's ridiculous. And we do need cultural change that makes it possible for women to not have to, be in this narrow little box. And interestingly, the people who are studies show, that's me.
She's got studies. She's got studies.
I wrote
think
that.
on the studies that the most effective leaders are people who can move between both styles, and women who can act both, sort of assertive and dominant when needed, and caretaking focused and warm when needed, that they are extremely effective leaders.
Wow.
There was a fascinating article in the Harvard Business Review that I refer to all the time, and I don't remember the title exactly, but it's something like "The Lack of Obstacles for Incompetent White Men," and it's because of what we're talking about. It's a great thing.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Why do you think I'm here today?
Yeah.
It's
There's such a long list of reasons,
How'd you
Jamie.
think I got here?
It's exactly what Sara was talking about, the the character traits we associate with leadership, which is being assertive in your opinions and being loud and taking control and being arrogant and all of these things that we say, oh, that's leadership, is actually terrible management skills.
Yes.
And so they can elevate
Fake
into these
news.
positions where they can't.
Fake news.
I mean, we have very big examples at very high levels of how this is true. But then when they get into the position, they can't actually manage because none of those skills translate into actually running an organization.
Does that sound like
in an
anybody
effective
you
way.
know?
Yeah. Truly.
There's something to it, I think.
Truly. Absolutely, Julie.
Are women?
Boeing's airports, their airplanes crash out of the sky because all these engineers couldn't, be humble about the fact that something wasn't working.
No, they kept trying to Frankenstein their plane back together.
Sounds like men are the ones that should be sent to management workshops.
Oh my God, Dina!
You think? I saw a cartoon about that once. Yeah.
By the way, this reminds me of a classic of if a man is standing alone in the forest and there's no women for miles in any direction, is he still wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Are women kinder than men online, Julie?
Yes.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, changing the subject.
Yes. I mean, I'll say they're not as mean.
We're meaner? Are we?
Well, I'm going to
Online.
declare
Meaner man?
the days of the catty bitches are over.
Mean
but
men?
I think online men can not all men, hashtag not all men.
You know something? You're right. We are more aggressive. We're more aggressive
if you
online.
go-
That's bullshit, man.
If you go to
my
the darker
women friends,
places
you're
of
right.
the internet,
You're right.
in subreddits or wherever you are, it's
Subreddits.
brutal.
Violent,
brutal.
it's sexual,
I
it's
bet.
threatening, it's I'm going to kill you but rape you first. Like, yeah, women can be catty, but they're not.
And that's on the
threatening.
Catholic
Can't they
website.
kill before
These
they
are
rape?
women writing this?
Oh no, it's the men.
No, the men.
I know.
Oh my goodness,
Get us
Jamie.
all riled up.
Oh my God. You need
I
a
know.
seminar.
We're doing a show.
All right.
Can I say something else about women networking on the web?
Okay.
One of the things that the web has been great for is to make it possible for whatever non-minority women with, whatever identities that aren't typical or that haven't felt comfortable, for people to connect, to find people like them and give each other mutual support, and then push out from those networks ideas that can in fact be useful for all women, like body positivity. I think the whole body positivity movement probably wouldn't have happened without the internet.
Awesome.
Fat shaming just really got a lot of attention. It rose to the top of a lot of people's consciousness because it was on the web, and not just because somebody that you knew who had been bullied because of her weight started to say, I don't want to take it anymore. So I think the web can be good for enabling people to connect with other people like them and build a certain amount of shared mutual support, and also the ability to communicate about their experience and their ideas.
Yeah, and also if someone has something about their appearance that's unique or that might be in person might be, look, this person, the first thing you notice about the person, if it's they're disabled or whatever it is, if you get to know them through typing, then you find out, this person is in a wheelchair. Then you're like, oh, cool, this is a cool person. So you got a different impression of them first through the internet than just their appearance.
Yeah.
Initially. So I think it's helpful in those regards. I have a question about wage secrecy, Sara.
Yes,
So when my sister was starting in the workforce, she said that she began a job and was told to keep her salary a secret because she was making more than others. Was this a ploy to keep her from knowing that she was making less? And how do you feel about wage secrecy, especially in the discrepancy between male and female wages? If you're told, you don't talk about your salary, does that give employers power over us?
Absolutely. It absolutely gives employers power, and employers will create the sense that it's taboo to talk about your salary. And for many, many decades, people never did. Apparently, millennials are more comfortable talking about their salaries with each other, even if they're in different fields or they're making a lot more or a lot less than someone else. And that openness is really useful. There are also kind of a reverse direction where states, Massachusetts, where I live, was the first one, have made it illegal for employers to ask you what your previous salary was when you were interviewing for a job. Because since women and minorities typically are paid less, and job offers are made based on, sort of a percentage increase over what you were making before. If they ask you what you were making, they give you whatever 3% more, you're going to not be paid as well as someone else with comparable qualifications, probably male, who was making more at his previous job.
And talk about
really a good way to actually close that wage gap is to not allow employers to ask people what they were making.
Can they ask you what you're expecting?
That's what I've heard that wording before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They can't ask you what you're expecting.
And Sara, can you talk a little bit?
You want to say, this is what I want to make.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about how women and girls start out in life at a lower rung just based on how they've been socialized? Because I found that part to be fascinating.
Yeah, well, so we socialize children, girls, to kind of wait to be praised, wait to be rewarded, wait to be invited to dance, wait to be proposed to be grateful, to say thank you. And we teach boys to, be little tough guys, go out there, mix it up, and get what they want for themselves. And so boys and girls reach adulthood with boys just having more experience, saying, that's what I want, give it to me. I'm whatever, it's mine. And girls thinking, do I get what, and leaving it to other people to decide what they deserve. And there's studies that show, it's again, here I am with the studies, called, locus of control studies. And men are raised to think the locus of control in their lives is internal. In other words, it's up to them to make things happen, make sure they get what they deserve. The locus of control, girls, external. Fate, supervisors, bosses, parents, authorities get to decide what they're worth, what they get. And so you go into the workforce thinking, all right, if I were good enough, they'd have promoted me. If I were good enough, they'd have paid me more. Whereas the boys are like, give me more. I'm good. And that's a real disadvantage starting out. And it takes a long time if women ever do get to the point where they think, no, I'm going to say what I think I'm worth. I'm going to say this is what I want.
And you just accept what is, because when you talked about babysitting, girls go babysitting, you don't ask, you don't negotiate. You're just told what babysitting pays. And this is what it pays everywhere in the world. And you don't question it. And so, and boys will, if they're doing work outside the home, they'll say, oh, well, I'm painting this or I'm mowing this, how much am I going to get? And
then you start at $500.
And then they
let them talk you down.
And then
or the neighbor will call up and say, will you come and mow my lawn, and how much would you charge for it? And the kid will say $15 an hour or $50 for the lawn or whatever. You give the boy the agency to say, this is what my work is worth. And the girls don't get that typically.
No, it's like we've been told this is what you get for taking care of my child, and you just think that that's all across society, and that it's not your place to question.
Babysat all the way through high school.
Did you?
Just FYI.
50 cents an hour, right?
Who knows? 50
right?
I lost a babysitting job once because I asked, they were paying me $5 an hour in Manhattan in the 90s.
$5 an hour?
$5 an hour for 2 kids. And I said, I charge $7 going forward. I've worked for 5.
There
and they
you
were
go.
like, well, you just priced yourself out of a job.
Oh my.
And they never called me again.
Really? Did you take one of the children?
And I used to take whatever I don't think I ever said I need more or I wanted more, which is funny. We have I think I'm a woman trapped in a man's body.
It could be.
I
Julie,
used to babysit grass.
Julie, talk about how the women in Hollywood in particular are banding together in groups and promoting themselves and each other, creating databases and communities, and it feels like some progress is finally being made.
Oh, the groundswell in Hollywood.
Finally, a real question.
I mean, gosh, the MeToo and Time's Up happening and the women in Hollywood. I mean, where do I even begin? Part of it is, just if you go on Facebook and search women Hollywood, there's 1,000 groups now of women in Hollywood banding together in all different categories. There's Alliance of Women Directors. There's an organization called Glass Elevator, which is about promoting women and getting women jobs. There's Women in Motion Pictures. I mean, I could name a million of them. And I've heard from women, like female composers in particular, a lot of them thought they were the only female composer in the industry. Yeah. And then they all popped their heads up and could see each other. I was like, wait a minute, there's a bunch of us. Therefore, we have power. Therefore, we can implement some change. And there's another group. Oh my gosh, the name went right out of my head.
It's all about networking. My daughter just hosted the Billboard Women in Music Awards. And it was the networking. You could feel that. I've said this before, I know, but you could feel the buzz in the room of just women empowering women. It was fantastic. It was really great. And that's what you need. And what I've heard today, it seemed, and Sara and Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's networking that gets the word out no matter how you do it. Whether you join the junior league or the YMCA or talk to somebody at your gym or, whatever.
Should people have...
It's making you believe that, letting people know that they're normal.
Should people have business cards on them, Sara, or should they just share a contact by holding their phones together? How are the kids doing it? Should you always have business cards?
I am not a kid, but I don't think there's any downside to giving somebody your card. No. People do so much with their phones. You take a picture, it could be the 40th picture back by the time they, get home that night. So I'm a big fan of business cards. They need to not be so shiny that they can't write a note on it so that they remember where they met you.
Good point. I need lines. I need those little blue lines.
Yeah.
And it comes with a little Sharpie
something
attached
on it. So
we're going to talk about what Jamie alluded to early in the show, and because Julie had emailed me about the 22. What is it, Julie? You talk about it.
22 convention.
What is this? What is this?
This is some nonsense that a bunch of alpha men in the manosphere are throwing a convention billed as they're going to mansplain, make women great again. And the only mission of a woman should be to have as many babies as possible and to serve her man and basically shut up and have babies.
I'm sucking at this so far.
And most people think
but you have other gifts.
I mean, it seems like it's a parody, but it's a real
It's
thing.
real?
It's real.
It's these guys. I thought they were snags.
Oh no! There
sensitive new age guys.
No. There are women. I don't know if it's largely Christian communities who just feel that if we change too much,
look at
that God won't like it.
Okay.
I don't know. Sara, do you have any thoughts?
I'm speechless.
Me too.
Because
that's the thing.
I think there are, what my idea of feminism is you get to choose whatever you want. And if you want to be a mother and you want to have lots of kids, stay home, fantastic.
Awesome.
You do that.
Yeah.
This idea that men get to decide there's only one way of being a woman or being a successful woman, I don't know how to argue with that because it seems so ridiculous.
But we shouldn't get in the way of your success in any way. That really is just not fair.
But why?
Well, you don't get to define what success is for women.
Because men's values. Because Dina was talking about men's values.
But what this convention is showing us is that there are women who are signed up for this, and they're telling other women how to be.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder how many women have signed up, and all the speakers are men.
Oh.
So I wonder.
All the speakers are men. I noticed that. I went through the list. Okay. Yeah, that was amazing. And their names are bizarre. I mean, Boingo, Ronnie, and
they're very macho.
Very macho. And the fellow who's organizing it, his middle name's I think Dream. And
Jamie, did you sign up for this?
No,
you know a little too much about what's happening at the convention.
It was almost like looking at Funny or Die.
Legendary Manosphere event architect.
It was just
and first
so
president
bizarre.
of the Manosphere, Anthony Dream Johnson.
Oh, there we go.
Anthony Dream Johnson.
Oh, they're wrestlers.
Tony Dream.
Julie got so upset.
This is
with
what
her headphones.
It's so upsetting.
It is.
They're gonna wrestle.
Oh,
I see.
Okay, well,
I think all this backlash that we see,
out.
like this stuff and what the evil guys on Reddit, those are all signs of the progress that we're making. Like people see it and they hate it.
It upsets.
That's a very glass half full way to look at it. I'm going to take it.
Let's take that. Absolutely.
Right. I mean,
2020 for me is all about looking at the glass.
Michael, tell up.
With better vision.
We just want to show you guys something else that we found on the website here really quickly.
Oh, careful.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
Have unlimited
Read what it
babies.
says, Michael.
It says, get pregnant and have unlimited babies.
Unlimited.
And it basically, this part of the whole seminar will just teach you how to have as many babies as your heart desires.
Wow, that's amazing. There should be a line of children.
And here's how to become the ultimate wife.
Can you schedule an appointment to get impregnated in the back?
Yes, 100%.
Wait a minute. It's a
Nobody
competition.
gets impregnated
Beat
in the back.
the competition. This is a new show.
Wait, beat the competition.
Scarcity.
Yeah. Oh.
get in the best shape ever.
That's right.
So I think that Fox TV teaches us what a woman is supposed to look like.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, no.
And that's important.
Like Tammy Faye Baker or something?
Oh, you have to be. You have to be
like
skinny.
a fox.
Like a fox.
Oh, like a fox.
That's right. So I kind of, yes, it's optimistic for me to see it as a death rattle, but there is always this response to progress, and Barack Obama taught us that we don't move forward in a straight line. It's
right.
Hopefully the arc is pointing in the direction of justice, but there are those who will resist change no matter what time period we're in. And if you compare, here's the thing that I always find so interesting is that we're really only on the planet for 100 years, hopefully. And we don't ever in our lifespan think about what it was like for women growing up in 1350.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was that fun. Mostly.
It couldn't have been.
Hard.
Couldn't have been. It was hard.
Shut up and eat your rock.
It was muddy. It was very muddy.
So we are moving forward, and it's always meant to be a struggle, and we're always supposed to be teaching one another, I think, is the challenge. What do you think, Sara?
Well, the pill only became available in the early 60s. So what's that? 50 plus years ago. So 100 years ago, women's life expectancy was greatly reduced because a lot of women died in childbirth. A lot of women had more babies than they wanted to. And in terms of our choices, definitely we've made a lot of progress. But clearly some crazy, angry forces have been unleashed or loosed on the world in the last few years that are kind of scary. I don't think we're going back to the world that this website describes, but I think it's scary. I guess that's
there's an ebb and flow in every movement and every form of evolution. There's an ebb and flow, and the strongest survive.
The scary thing is there's so many of them in the position to make the laws that control us.
Because that's the way it's been, but that's not the way it's going to be.
It's minority rule at the moment. That's why we have to.
I don't think that's why we have to fight for it.
We have to work hard.
Yeah, we have to fight.
I came to a place recently.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I came to a place recently where I finally accepted this is not going to be solved in my lifetime, but it is our job to push the rock up the hill as much as we can while we're here, and just know that we're going to incrementally.
Sara?
Millennials give me a lot of hope.
Yeah.
People complain about the millennial generation a lot, but they are much more comfortable with varied intersectional identities. They're much more comfortable with the idea that, it's okay to not work 90 hours a week the way their boomer dads did. A lot of the men want to spend more time with their families, watch their kids play soccer, take some time for their causes and their hobbies in ways that older generations didn't. And so when men want the same things that women want, when men want some balance in their lives, then there is likely to be some change.
Yeah, it is a relief from toxic masculinity if the guy gets to relax a little and be warm.
And yet they gave us electronic dance music.
Who?
The millennials?
The millennials.
All right, we're going to jump.
They also talk about their salaries. That's right.
We're going to jump to Facebook feed. What's that, Sara?
There are a lot of great things about that generation. I think there's a lot of hope there.
I hope so.
All right, we're going to jump to Facebook feed time. Mark Maurer posts, teenagers fill car full of koalas to save them from bushfires. And we have a little video to play of that.
Oh, God.
And you're going to weep a little bit because it's kind of beautiful.
But at least they're doing it.
It's a car full of koalas, everybody.
They're doing it.
Doing a little koala rescue.
Don't let him drive.
She's a mother with a baby. And I'm cuddling. Just trying to collect as many live ones as we can. Doing a little koala rescue.
Wow. So please donate through SamaritansPurse.org or through a vetted charity that you will find at charitynavigator.org. Australia needs our hugs and prayers and love, and money helps as well. Thank you to our guests, Sara Laschever and Julie Harris-Walker. Our panel is Jamie Alcroft and Danny Mann. Our producer is Dina Friedman. Our tech team is Michael Telep and Francesco Damonda. Our sound mixer is John Maddox. Our webmaster is Bill Filipiak, who has a new album out. Google him. We are part of the Big Heads Media family. I am Louise Palanker. Be safe, be well, be kind, and we will see you next week.